Hi, my name is Renee with ReDesing by Renee Co, and I am doing a resin with a dried floral trays. I'm actually going to do two different trays. These are wooden trays that I picked up from like Ross, and I have lightly sanded the inside of these and used clean slate to prep the surface because they do come with some kind of a finish on them. So I have cleaned them with clean slate, as well as I did scuff sand them a little bit so that the surface will actually hold the resin on there. And I am using the Amy Howard Glacier resin. If you're used to using resin, I have used a lot of different resin products, and I am in love with this resin. It is amazing. It is crystal clear, super easy to work with, self-leveling, all of the things you want in a resin product. I've done a lot of charcuterie boards with these, and they turn out amazing. I've done tables, a lot of different products because I actually love to play with resin. It comes in two different parts, and you use equal parts of each, which I will show you here in just a moment. And like I said, this dries crystal clear. You can use the powder pigments to tint it. I have used some of the paint to tint it a little bit on some of my resin boards. There are many different things, but I'm just going to use it clear in its natural state for the project that I'm doing today, because I'm using these really bright, bold, dried flowers. I did get the flowers from some friends because I can keep all of my indoor plants alive, but I cannot keep the outdoor plants alive. So I stopped trying to be a plant graveyard, and I called on some friends to give me some of their cuttings because this is not my gift. I have other gifts, this is not one of them. So the tools you will need for this is you want a very clean measuring bowl, cup of some sort, because when you mix the resin, you need to have exact equal parts of each product. So you want to make sure you have a way to measure that. You will want some gloves. I am in a very well ventilated area, so I'm not going to wear my respirator mask today, but you want a pair of gloves. If you are doing multiple, if you're doing boards, I have the whole box of gloves available because I switch out my gloves multiple times. These actually are inlaid a little bit, so the resin is not going to pour over these at all. If you're doing a charcuterie board or another project like that, you would actually want to have them raised up and also have a tool that you can clean off the bottom. I set my timer for every 15 minutes to check my resin and make sure there are no air bubbles in it. You have to kind of babysit resin. And this is where this little tool comes in. This is just a little tool that allows you to go over the surface with it's a little propane gun, and you just go over the surface to get any air bubbles out. And you'll need a stir stick. If you are doing multiple colors, tints, you would want several extra bowls to dump into so you can mix your colors individually. But I always leave, when I am mixing different colors, I always leave some of the clear. I always leave extra clear, because you always need extra clear no matter what, even if you're mixing a bunch of different colors, because you usually have just a clear line at the end of whatever project that you're doing. So to start this off, I'm going to put my gloves on, and I'm going to mix up probably half of these. These are 8 ounces, so I'm only going to mix up a total of 8 ounces. So I'll pull 4 ounces from each of these bottles. And for this project, since I am picking up these very small dried flowers, I did grab a pair of tweezers so that I can do that. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my bowl is completely clean, and I'm going to turn it this way so that I can get. Another thing is, when you're doing resin, you want to make sure that you are at a completely level surface. So make sure, I've already made sure that this is completely level, but you will want to get your level out and make sure whatever surface you're doing your resin on, because it is self-leveling, you want to make sure that it is level. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to put part B in there, and I'm only going to do 4 ounces of each so that it makes a total of 8 ounces, because I believe that's all I'm going to need for this project. So I'm putting in 4 ounces of part B first, and you want it to be exact. So I will mix 4 ounces of part B, and then I will add in 4 ounces of part A, bringing it up to the 8 ounce mark. So part A is a little thicker, so I usually just do blops and let it rest for a minute so that it doesn't go up and above the 8 ounce mark. And then I'm going to mix this so I let it rest for a minute. When it gets close to that 8 ounce mark, I let it rest and then just let it slowly drip in there because you don't want it to go above that 8 ounce mark. It seems this is thicker. Sometimes it settles in a little bit and it would go up above there if I kept pouring. So when it gets real close, I slow it down and check it. Need just a itty bit more. So if you don't mix it exact, what happens is your resin does not set up properly, and who wants that? Nobody wants that. So taking my Amy Howard stick, and I'm going to just stir this for 2 minutes until it is completely incorporated, as you can see here. Now you don't want to whisk this really heavily because you don't want to make more air bubbles than are necessary. You really just want to give this a good stir and make sure that it's really incorporated and that both of those components get all incorporated together, because this is what creates the ability for it to harden. And I'm not exactly sure about the 100% science behind this because I'm not a science major, but there's something that happens when these two combine that allow it to activate. And after you've worked on it for a little while, I think the work time on this is about 30 minutes before it starts to harden. You have about a 30-minute window to work with the resin if you're tinting and doing, you know, bigger boards and things like that. You have about a 30-minute window before it actually starts to set up, which is a good amount of time. So I'm just stirring this, and I'm also wiping along the edges here to make sure that there's nothing on those edges. And if you do have air bubbles, that's okay. We're going to use our little propane gun to get those out. If you do not have one of those, you can use a heat gun or a hair dryer. Just be mindful that if you are using a hair dryer, that will push the resin as well. So you want to keep that on a low volume setting, but you want to have it like on a medium heat setting. But this is just a simple project. I keep seeing these pretty little trays out when I'm out shopping, and I've been wanting to do some. These are perfect for jewelry or a little change tray, something to put your keys in, many different things you can use them for. Okay, so I have got my resin completely incorporated. And to start off, all I'm going to do is take one of my bowls to start with. And do we want to start with pink or yellow? Let's start with the pink. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of resin into the bottom of this tray. And you will see that it's actually starting to level itself out already. And if you do accidentally get resin on other areas that you did not intend to get the resin on, you could easily just sand it right back off. So this is the first one. I don't know if you can see the resin in there. You can see there's a lot of bubbles on there. There is a lot of bubbles. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little propane gunny, and as you can see here, you can see all these little bubbles. And you can see them just all dissipating just by doing this quick little heat thing. So that's the first thing I do, is I give it one quick pass with all of this little heat and get that, or gets all those little air bubbles out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my tweezers, and I am going to grab some of my little florals and dip them way down into that resin. I don't know if you can see that. get way up there where you can see what I'm doing here. So since it is self-leveling, you will see that the flowers go right down in there. You just tuck them down in with some tweezers. Now I would use tweezers that you're willing to throw away afterwards. And the resin will level right over top of that product, those little flowers. Oops. Oop. This one doesn't want to get picked up. There we go. Oop. So just push down lightly with your tweezers to get it up underneath that resin, and then the resin will level right over top of it. Oh, it's pretty. I'm loving it already. So now I would like to add a little bit of greenery in there, or maybe one of these little leaves. So many options. Actually, this right here, look how pretty that is. That's really pretty. I'm loving these colors. Really pretty. So over this side, since I did add florals to that side, I'm gonna go over it one more time with my little heat. Pop any extra bubbles that were formed by me putting something in there. And now we're gonna do the other side. These look really pretty. Can't wait to show you the photo of these when they're done. So again, I'm just gonna dip it down in there. So we're gonna do one pink one, and now I'm just gonna add a little leaf to it, just for that extra little beautifulness. And how you dry the flowers is you just get your little cuttings, and then you take some wax paper and you stick the wax paper in a book, like a thick book, and make sure that you have some weights on top of it to get them to dry all the way down. One more little piece. How about one of these? So the tweezers are important for this step, even if you just have a little plastic pair, because it allows you to pick up these little delicate leaves, flowers, without damaging them. As you can see here, it's just leveling right over top of there. So I'm gonna add just a smidge more resin on top of each of these. And I did get a little bit right here on this, but that's okay. I can always sand that off after this is all done. So I'm adding just a little bit more resin to make sure everything is completely coated. Just a little bit more. Oh, I'm loving this. It looks so pretty with those contrast of colors. So I'm going to use my heat gun one more time to go over these and make sure all the air bubbles are popped, because if you do not get the air bubbles popped, this is why I also babysit my resin. When I'm done pouring my resin, I set my timer for every 15 minutes. And every 15 minutes, I come back and check my resin just to make sure there's no extra air bubbles, because as it starts to set up, some more air bubbles may come out. And you don't want the air bubbles, because then it doesn't look perfect. And I'm particular, I want mine to be perfect. So I will do this. This one is set up and ready to just be, sit still. Can you see how gorgeous that is? Let's do the yellow one. So, again, I'm gonna pour a little bit of resin into each of these. So I've only used half of the 8 ounce. I've used half of these, I've used 4 ounces from each of these. So you can get multiple projects out of this. So I'm just pouring a little bit into each side. And now we're gonna use the yellow, which is just gonna be this big, bold, lots of color here. This is pretty. Actually, I want it to face the other way. Very pretty. I'm loving these pops of color. Completely beautiful fall colors. So I'm putting that, so I'm gonna pour some on top of this as this starts to set up a little bit, because my leaf is just a little bit bigger than what it was. And then I'm gonna take my tweezers and just push it down in there so that it settles closer to the bottom. Once you push it down and the resin comes over top of it, it kind of weights it down for you. It may raise up a little bit, but it pretty much tries to stay closer to the bottom. And now we're gonna do number 2. Another pretty one. So many pretty little flowers here. What else? One of these. And then one of these. These are really pretty. So I'm gonna go ahead and just use my heat right here to get rid of the bubbles on this side. And I'm gonna pour a little bit more on this side to get those to go down a little bit more. So before it is cured, you can keep adding extra to it, especially if you want it to be a little bit thicker than you originally had it. You can add more resin. When it starts to sit up, after that 30-minute window, you're not gonna wanna add more at that time. You'd wanna let it fully cure before, if you wanted to make it thicker, let it fully cure, and then you can add more later. These are really pretty. I think I might add one more thing in the center of this one. Maybe this right here. I think that's would be pretty in there. And this is, I mean, this really is strictly up to whatever your mind wants to create, you know? There's no limits on art, and this is just fun art. It's super easy to do, as you can see. This is taking me no time at all. You can use this to make pendants, coasters, charcuterie boards, so many possibilities. Oh, I'm loving this. This is really pretty. So I'm gonna go over this one more time. This one, I'm gonna let it start to sit up a little bit. I do see some more air bubbles I need to get out. But again, I will babysit this every 15 minutes. Just checking to see if there are any air bubbles, anything at all that I need to try to get out while that is setting up. But I keep coming back over this. So I literally set a timer for every 15 minutes just to kind of come back and just run my little propane gun over top of it to pop any air bubbles. And by doing this, I ensure that I have a completely beautiful finish at the end where there's no air bubbles. My finish is crystal clear, and this resin, like I said before, this resin is so easy to work with. It is definitely one of my all-time favorite resins. The ease of working with it, minimal air bubbles come with this. It self-levels like a dream, and it dries crystal clear. And that's exactly all of the main elements that you're looking for with resin. And this has all of those elements. So I will have these finished in a moment, and I will show you what they look like. I am in love with the contrast of the bright pops of color against the wood grain. As you can see, the resin set up beautifully, and I did babysit it every 15 minutes for a full hour. It is difficult to see in the photos just the depth of the resin with the beautiful flowers, adding that pop of color against the natural wood grain. I am in love with how these turned out. Such an easy, simple project, and it literally took me less than 20 minutes to accomplish.